Welcome to the Purple Pod. This is the podcast where we look at the music, the albums, the associated material of his purpleness, the man himself, the artist formerly known as, and the artist that is, Prince. On this episode, as always, joined by a guest, and we're going to talk through one of Prince's albums. And at this time, I want to say hello to Tommy McDonald. Tommy, thanks very much for joining us.
Hey, Pete, thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation. So glad we could sit down together.
Good. I'm really pleased that you're here. First things first, how did you get into Prince? How did you end up a Prince fan?
Well, my older sister came home with a 45, and she had written all over it to let me know that it was her 45. And it was this single from this up and coming, R&B artist named Prince. Kind of name is that for a young man? Called Soft and Wet. And I put it on, and okay, so this is why okay, I get it. It's having an interesting effect on my sister, and it's beyond, the usual teeny bop, because she was Michael Jackson's biggest fan.
Yeah.
Pictures all over the wall. But Prince was more of a, she shouldn't be listening to this, which made me, kind of like, hey. So it was like really interesting, super funky. And every time he dropped something, we were on board. I was on board. So I went where he was trying to take us. And it started with, Soft and Wet. I guess we're the prototypical audience for the Minneapolis sound. I'm from a small town in Tennessee. We grew up on the radio, but we also grew up on soul music. And, I guess we're his target audience, and we got it. And, it's shaped how I hear music, ever since. And I had a good start before I heard it.
Yeah. I'm so jealous that you were there from the beginning, every time an album dropped, you were like, okay, new album, here we go. Let's, take this on board. Let's, you saw that rise through everything. Oh my goodness, that's incredible.
Oh, yeah. When I was a kid, it was a status symbol to see who had it first.
Wow.
This was before the internet. Like and again, being from a small town, you had to go to a major city to get to a record store to get it.
Yeah.
Right? Unless your older cousin heard it in a larger market. So you had to rely on your cousins in Detroit and Cleveland and New York, who would hear it on the radio and get it to you. So, Prince was like feeding a lot of music into Detroit. So, my Detroit cousins would already be, sort of plugged into where the sound was headed. But yeah, people would race to get it first and go through it and listen to it and get all the nuances and have all the stories. It's part of the myth making,
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's really, and of course that was in the day when kind of US and UK release dates would have been different. So we wouldn't have had it for days, sometimes weeks, after you kind of started to take it in. That's lovely. The album that you've chosen to talk about is Lotusflow3r. Just, a few kind of establishing facts. It's the 33rd full-length studio album. It was actually sold in a package with his 34th album, MPL Sound. Initially released as a download on the launch date of Prince's website, lotusflow3r.com, with a CD release exclusively at Target 5 days later in a 3 CD package that also included Bria Valenti's first and only album, Elixir. So in September 2009, France then got a 2 CD package that also included MPL Sound. There's not a lot known about the recording dates for this album, there was an interview that Michael B gave where he said we just basically got together at Paisley Park and just recorded a load of songs in one night. And a lot of the songs made up this album, MPL Sound, but it also, a lot of the stuff was on 3121 and Planet Earth, which had already been out. And there's been kind of talk and, rumors that Prince has said, I couldn't find anything to back it up, that he kind of saved his best for Lotusflower. That he didn't put the real big songs on 3121 and Planet Earth, which I don't completely buy because, there's some absolutely huge songs on those albums. But it's believed that the majority of this was recorded in kind of late 2004 and then, kind of just worked on until he decided to release the album. Why this album, Tommy? What is it about this one that kind of speaks to you?
So, a couple of reasons. I'm a guitar player and I'm a funkadelic disciple.
Oh, wow.
And, Prince was one of, I guess, maybe the four players that made me want to pick it up, right? When I was a kid, I wanted to be Eddie Hazel, but I was raised on Freddie King, right? But Prince's rhythm guitar playing just did it for me, right?
Yeah.
And you can't be a guitar player without worshiping Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
So that brought me to the table. And Funkadelic had an album called Hardcore Jollies. And it was dedicated to the guitar players of the world. That's the inscription on the album. And I believe that Lotusflower was that for Prince guitar fans.
Yeah.
And a payback for what we didn't get for the Undertaker project with that getting pulled. Because that was the original gift to guitar players.
Yeah.
And if you are really about that 6-string life and shaking them strings like he does, if Honky Tonk Woman and that version of Bambi don't do it for you, you're not into guitar, right? And so, to your point, in terms of like holding all of that best for last, I strongly believe that he saved a lot of his guitar chops for that project, because you got to remember he was in a serious guitar playing era, and now that we can kind of backwards map his life, it was kind of like, let me give you what I got while I still got it, while I can still physically give it to you.
Exactly.
And yeah. And I mean, a lot of that was LA Prince, which was fun Prince. We think about, a lot about Minneapolis, but he used to decamp in LA. He was throwing them house parties around that 3121 period, and he was playing a lot of guitar. And I felt like he was just like, I got to show y'all that I'm that dude.
Yeah. Because it was an odd period for him, wasn't it, really? Because he wasn't at the top of his game. We'd had the kind of slave. He'd fallen out with Warner Brothers. He was in this kind of place of wanting to give the fans as much access to the music as he possibly could. He wasn't and obviously this is a kind of European view. This is how we were viewing Prince, was he wasn't this hit maker that we'd known him to be. Planet Earth was released with a Sunday newspaper over here.
Yeah. The Sun, right?
It was the Daily Mail or the Mail.
Sorry.
Yeah. Was what he released it with. So it was. I remember getting up, the crack of dawn, going down, getting 2 kind of copies of that. And when he released this, it's exactly as you say, Tommy. The broad brush is, MPL Sound was back to funky. It was really kind of what we'd really been missing a little bit. There's some tracks on there. You're like, oh my goodness, we've not had anything like this for a while. But yeah, Lotusflower it was a friend of mine. So I love the guitar, but I can't play the guitar. I'm a drummer. I'm a tub thumper. I'm all about the rhythm. But I'm in awe of anyone that can play the guitar. And I think part of it is because when I was at school, I learned piano, and that is a linear instrument. It goes, low on one side, high on the other, and that's it. And then when I was introduced to the guitar, and I was like, no, it's because it's almost in 3D, because it's like, right, you go high, but then you can go high here, and that note that you can make there, you can also make here, and things like that. I was like, okay, this isn't, and I'm a drummer. We don't like things too complicated.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting how you describe your piano experience, because one of my guitar teachers, when he was listening to Prince, he was just like, plays guitar like a piano player. He was essentially talking about the songwriting.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense. But it was always interesting, to hear people who speak both of those languages.
Yeah.
I took piano when I was a kid, but I chose the devil's tune, the devil's instrument.
I love it. But this guitar playing friend of mine, what he says about Lotusflower is, the way he describes it is, this is the album Jimi Hendrix would have made if he'd still been alive. And he thinks there's a couple of tracks on here that are absolutely Jimmy through and through. And in fact, I think one of my top 20 Prince songs is on this album. This is an important album for me, but only became important in later years. I remember first hearing it and wanting a hit kind of thing, and not quite hearing it in what I was getting. I was too inexperienced when it came to music when I first heard it, and it's only as I've gotten older, I was 36, 37, I think, when I heard it. So, it's not like I was a kid, but I was still very naive in the music I was listening to. And it was only as time's gone on, I've been like, okay, this is why this is a great album.
Well, give yourself a little grace, because this is what I will say. I would say starting with the Prince album, the self-titled album, not For You, but the first Prince album. I never like his music when I first hear it.
Yeah.
First time I sit there and listen to an album, I'm like, damn, he missed. But then I go back and it's just like, oh, I missed that. Oh, now I see. Oh, that's a bop, right? But like first listen, I'm like, what the hell am I listening to?
Yeah.
But it's just, you have to sit with it. You have to grow with it, and settle in. And you made a great point. Like, you were looking for like, I want to have that hit, but that's what, Minneapolis Sound was for, right? That was to give you that hit, that old thing back.
Yeah.
Lotusflower was for the heads, the people who would appreciate, oh, that's him, Michael Bland and Sonny locked in a room.
Yeah.
Or that's him, Cora and Josh locked in a groove.
Because I think you're absolutely right. Because, of course, by doing this and releasing it through the website and this way of releasing albums, he was answerable to no one. There was no record company executive. There was no sales, didn't matter. Charts didn't matter. The people that wanted it were getting it, and that's what mattered to him. was that, the people were getting the music, and they were getting his music that he wanted to release.
Mhm. And he was winning in such non-traditional ways. The point that you made about him giving it away in the newspaper, the
Mm,
Target package, where he packaged all
yeah,
three albums. I mean, he had two of his own albums and his air quotes protege, album, as part of that package. But I mean, let's go back to musicology when he built it into the ticket sales. I
yeah,
mean, the man knew how to, it's like, you're going to make me a slave to the system. I'm going to get outside the system and I'm going to game it to work for me.
yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant businessman.
Yeah, without a doubt. So the first track is called "From the Lotus," originally called "From the Lotusflower" on an early iteration of the album. Um, uh, Believed to be one of those kind of 11 or 12 tracks that Prince and Michael B and Sonny T worked on. And this again goes back to what we were saying earlier on about it being the guitar album. We're only a few seconds in when the first thing that came to my mind was Santana. Just the first note was all about Santana when he brought that in.
Mm. Let's put a pin. Let's put a pin in that Santana note because that's going to become a recurring theme in this analysis, particularly in terms of who you had originally talked about as an original. Well, not an original, but um, I guess an influence that you were picking up in this album. But you're exactly right in terms of Santana. So what I'm picking up from this in terms of like mood setter, I'm getting a little bit of Bitches Brew, a little bit of Free Your Mind, Your Ass Will Follow in terms of that sort of build up,
Yeah,
but also something that he was playing in the set very regularly and was one of my favorites when he was doing Billy Cobham's Stratus and just kind of taking you on a build up ride
yeah,
and using that guitar to soar over the top of that. I mean, I feel like that was like sort of the perfect sort of album setter that lets you know, oh yeah, sit back, take your hand away from the skip button. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a ride, lay back and groove with us.
yeah. Absolutely. Because, and again, we'd been conditioned that an album setter was a big funky track or a big rock track, or it was Let's Go Crazy, it was 1999, it was
Mm-hmm.
Thunder, those big kind of
Mm-hmm.
statement songs. And this wasn't. This was, listen, this is what this album is. This is what we're going to be doing for the next hour or so. And it's just as you say, Tommy, keep your hand away from the skip button and let's walk through this together. There was a real, it's an unhurried track, as in, listen, we've got nowhere to be, we've got nothing to do, we're gonna have a good time, so let's just all go and have a good time together.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things where, so I'm a huge fan of the power trio of Prince, Michael Bland, and Sonny T.
Oh,
When those three cats lock in, it's hard for me to find three that can be better.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and you really got the sense of that, like three trusted musicians who were like, hey, let's just run the tape, turn the tape on, and let's just see what we do.
and I think that is absolutely the right word, is trust. I think he had trust in pretty much all the members of his band, otherwise they're not in his band.
Right.
But it's just as you say, that solid kind of thing. It always reminds me. It must have been. I think it was the Symbol tour where Sonny T was playing bass and Michael B was on drums, and there was and this is, I can't even remember the song. I can't remember, but he was just allowing the groove to play in the middle of the song, which was essentially just Michael B and Sonny T. And this was Wembley Stadium. So this is, tens of thousands of people. And he turns his back to the audience, not in a gesture of rudeness, but he's just stood there watching these two play. Sonny had moved into the middle of the stage a little bit, so he was just by the drums. And Prince is just kind of stood there, his hands behind his back, just tapping his foot and bobbing his head and just watching. And I remember thinking, who doesn't want that from an artist, that they're enjoying this as much as we are, these two guys just playing? And I think that goes with the trust, is he trusted them to kind of play with him and know where he was going, but he loved listening to these guys play.
Well, you have to remember who Sonny T was to Prince.
Yeah.
He inspired him to play guitar.
Yeah.
That was his, guitar role model. We were talking about Santana in terms of who he modeled his playing after, but in terms of like local hero, like that's who I want to, that's the dude in the neighborhood I want to be. It was Sonny T. So then to get him into your band after you've become, the type of player that you are, and that's the person that you choose to be at your side when you're really trying to make a statement as a guitar player. I mean, that's huge, right? Same thing here. Same thing with the Undertaker project. I mean, when he wanted some thump, so he could like really get into his guitar bag, you had to have Sonny T playing that left, that upside down bass.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's no shade on Levi Ceasar Jr., who of course was the bass player during kind of the Love Sexy tour and the Sign of the Times tour. Levi's a great bass player, but he's not
even better guitar player though. Better guitar player.
Yeah, he really. Yeah, I think he really found his own. But so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He's still gigging around here in the Bay. He stays connected. Yeah, he stays connected to, Dwayne Wiggins from Tony. He plugs in with a lot of, like Prince tribute bands.
Wow.
But yeah, no, Levi's still out here. I ran into him just doing some random like music in the park thing. Where he had a band, and Levi's still out here doing his thing.
Oh, we'll have to get him on. We'll have to get. I'd love to know which album he'd choose, but yeah.
That would be a great one. That would be a great one. But yeah, no, Levi's still out here doing his thing.
Good. I'm so pleased, and it's been and to be fair, it's been refreshing. I know the MPGs still do some stuff. So one of the previous episodes, in fact, it was the last episode, we talked about Diamonds and Pearls. And that was obviously the beginning of a shift for Prince. And we talked about the presence of Tony M in his music. And it was, the fact that Tony's still going. He's still, kind of still performing, still doing what he does. And the MPG still perform it occasionally and we'll get together. And I think that's so good that the music's still going and that these guys, for all the tales of Prince was a real taskmaster. He was a tough boss. He was, you were on call 24/7. For all of that, the love that these guys clearly have for him and for the music, is really lovely to hear and to see. It's it's excellent.
Yeah. I mean, and also think about what it's done for their career. I mean, what better vouch can you have? Because of all the reasons that you just said, they're like, oh, you're a professional. You're not going to be fazed by anything. So, I mean, it's kind of the best blessing that you can have. So yeah, you'll put up with that low pay. You'll put up with those on-call hours because as a musician, you don't have to worry about work.
No, I mean, Levi said there's a documentary that was shown over here, and he was talking about bands that he'd been in before he worked for Prince, and he said, you could kind of drift a little bit. You knew what you were playing, you knew how you were going to get from A to B in the song, and you knew what the song was going to be, and all that. He said what was great with working for Prince was obviously during the show, you knew how it was all going to work. He said, of course, so he's talking about the Sign of the Times tour, the Love Sexy tour, that were quite heavily choreographed, really. There was points you had to hit. But he was also talking about the after show. And he said, because there's no way you could drift in the after show, because he would literally call out key changes on the fly. And you had to be awake, you had to be ready, you had to be on it. He said, didn't matter that it was 3 a.m. in a small club. You've got to, I've got to be present. I've got to be ready for it, So, and he was grateful for that fact. That it made him kind of fall in love with playing again, which I think is really nice.
They always say musicians speak this special language, and and a nonverbal language, and I mean, I think this first opening track really embodies that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they went in there with like a rough idea. Let's just mess around, see what happens. I'm sure there were a lot of head nods and nonverbal cues that made that, that opening track magical. And like I said, just kind of set the stage for like, the tracks that followed. This was indeed an album experience, like in the old school.
Yeah, you're right. As I've said, one of my favorite songs of his is on this album. So I generally hear that in isolation, and it's great to hear it when it comes on. But it's been really good over the past few days of hearing it in the album setting and how it all sits in. There's a real lovely flow to this album, both literally and figuratively. We did have a lot of songs that went into one another. Things kind of were underneath the end of one song that would become the beginning of a next song. But also it just flows musically, when the next song comes on, you're like, yeah, this absolutely has its place here as the 4th song on the album or the 2nd song on the album or, whatever. And indeed, talking to that, the second track is Boom, which feels like a really natural, and indeed it just kind of goes into it, from the Lotus, just kind of brings us into Boom.
Yeah, here's the thing about Boom. I originally thought like, oh, the tape is still running, right? But I believe this may be a track with Cora and Josh, who were part of that 3121 band. And this is the downside of when Prince gave Taika a job to take down all the unauthorized videos from the internet. One that got taken down that I thought was just so excellent. When he was trying to promote Third Eye Girl, he did a mashup with Boom and Stratus, the Billy Cobham song that I was just talking about. Flowed together so perfectly. And the guitar was just that much more expressive, right? The man loves him a wah-wah pedal. Give it up for the Dunlop Crybaby. That is the secret sauce and old boy sound. And it was just so on display here with Boom. But that was an instrumental track. And so when you put it side by side with the album track, I think that's what just made it so dynamic. The lyrics are like very spacey, very exploratory, and it's a nice little ride. And, on theme, a great continuation from that opening little track, right? Takes us on some twists and turns, hits real hard, goes back to ethereal, I mean, really nice, just keeping the high going, if you will.
Yeah, and that's what I like about this album. Coming back to it now, is that it doesn't. There's very few moments where you are settled. Of like, right, I know what's happening for the next 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. There's little kind of surprises. This was recorded actually. This was recorded at Sunset Sound in Hollywood. So.
L.A. Prince.
Yeah, that's exactly, it's, and again, when you see the songs he worked on, as we say, the kind of 11, 12 songs that he worked on with Michael B and Sonny T, that kind of almost an overnight session that he did. We're talking 3121, Back to the Lotus, Colonize Mine, which we'll get to, Love Like Jazz, which we'll get to, Walla Berlin, Planet Earth, Guitar, Shameless, and a few other tracks. This session here was where he did, First Cut is the Deepest, Compassion, Turn Me Loose, Future Soul Song, Dreamer, which is coming up later. The next song, the Crimson and Clover cover, and All Shook Up. So he was, again, you can, just reading that and thinking, right, so when he did this, he did Dreamer, he did Crimson and Clover. I can see it's like, oh yeah, absolutely. And the revelation you've given us, Tommy, is that thing of LA Prince, of this. Yeah. It's a different, it's almost a different texture to what he does, and it's almost how you can almost tell where he was, not just in his mind, in his, in himself, but where he was geographically when he was recording stuff.
And where he was with his guitar tone.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was playing those butchered Fender Stratocasters. It was a Stratocaster body, but he had that EMG humbucker and then the EMG single coil. He basically had like the cloud guitar pickups in a Stratocaster.
Yeah.
It's kind of an abomination, but, it still had that tone. And, anytime Prince gets on a whammy bar and a wah pedal, it's going to be a fun ride.
Yeah.
But yeah, that tone was like, very singular during that time. I believe he was playing orange amps. So he had like gotten away from the Soldanos and the Mesa Boogies. So, really leaning into his like Guitar Hero distortion, saturated sound. And, that was, like I said, that was LA Prince, throwing those house parties at that, at Carlos Boozler's house that he was renting from him, the famous story with that place. And Sunset Sound was kind of his, home away from home. That's, the album before there was Paisley Park, if he wasn't recording at the Purple House, it was Sunset Sound in LA, it was his house.
Yeah. The third track on the album, which wasn't on the download version, was a cover of Tommy James and the Shondells song Crimson and Clover. Their version came out in 1968. But on the download version, it was The Morning After was here, which, of course...
Remember that? That was a bop, too. I remember that. Couldn't turn into the morning after. Good old, that was songwriter Prince. And we'll get to that on a couple of other tracks. But yeah. I remember that. I forgot all about that tune.
It's great, which is from the Symbol album. And I think released as a single as well. But also in this, as well as this, doing this Crimson and Clover cover, he puts the Trogs Wild Thing in there as well. And this comes back to something you were saying earlier on of just let the tape run. Let's just see what we do, see where we end up, see where we get to,
So that song, I have so many mixed emotions about that because this is Mr. Write Your Own Song.
Mhm.
Don't cover my tunes
Yeah.
unless I want to cover your stuff.
Yeah.
We did like a really good job with it.
I think he did.
In terms of like, emotion and, not doing too much on the guitar, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The Hendrix thing, he got to a point, and I guess this happened around the Super Bowl when he was doing the Super Bowl show, because you remember he was doing All Along the Watchtower. He was teasing that out. So for a long time, all Prince did was run from the Jimmy comparisons,
Yeah.
right? I had the only reason you're comparing me to Jimmy is because I'm black. I don't sound nothing like Jimmy. And at that time, it made sense because
Yeah.
if you really listened, yeah, he is influenced by Santana because the quote, Santana was prettier. But chip on the shoulder Prince was like, you know what? I'm just going to grab this mantle. Y'all been wanting me to do it, and I can do it. And there are so many recordings that have come out, like, Paisley Park jam sessions and shows where he's had various Hendrix covers, like Villanova Junction was like an incredible one. He did Purple House for the Hendrix tribute album, but he mostly ran away from that Hendrix legacy. And this album, he just stopped playing. And we'll get to Dreamer, which is the most blatant, example of that. But it's like, yeah, stop running from it, brother.
Yeah.
This is who you are. Claim your crown. If you want to be seen as a guitar hero, do guitar hero shit.
It's
So
in the same way, I always felt that until Bruno Mars did the Prince tribute at the Grammys, Bruno Mars had been kind of leaning away from I'm not the new Prince, or I'm not, Prince Light or anything like that. But then again, I think he just leaned into it. It was like, yeah, all right, fine. If that's what you want, that's kind of what I'll be. And I don't think anybody judged Prince any less for leaning into the Jimi Hendrix.
not at all, because he could actually pull it off. And it's funny you mentioned Bruno Mars. Michael Bland had some very unkind things to say about that.
Fair enough.
Because he was just like, okay, I get it. You're doing a little note for note thing. But see, this is like real musician snarkery. He was like, either stop bending sharp or get some heavy guitar strings. And of course, that made me check myself because I was like, ooh, that cuts close. That sounds familiar.
I love it. The one thing that when I was kind of just reading up on this, is that there's no credits. Obviously, we know Prince is on it, but there's no confirmation of anybody else that was on this at all. We know it was recorded, again, Sunset Sound, in August of 2008. He started playing it in October of that year, playing it live. But there's no record of who else was on the track, who played, who. So it could easily have been, I don't think it was, but it so could easily have been just him kind of going back to the old school of, it's just me in a recording studio, I'll just do everything. But yeah, it is. It's, and it, like you say, I didn't know it was a cover. I didn't know, I wasn't aware of the Tommy James and the Shondells version. I've listened to it since, and you're right. I think he does a decent job of it. I think he makes it Prince. It's not a note for note kind of cover. He's not. He wasn't being a tribute act. He was being himself when he kind of played it.
Yeah. I mean, and for a guy who doesn't like his music covered, he really did a respectful cover of someone else's music.
I seem to think it was Emancipation was his first.
Betcha by golly, wow.
Yeah, and I Can't Make You Love Me.
That was a good one too.
And One of Us, the Joan Osborne song. you know, I mean, as you say, you know, he didn't like his music being covered, but he put 3 on one album.
Yeah, but he sure would. He sure would take yours if you liked it. If he liked it, I'm like, that's funny.
Absolutely. So the next track, the 4th track, is Forever. Again, not much is known about kind of the recording dates. But Tamar Davis is on background vocals here, and that would generally put it before summer 2006 is when this was recorded. That's when it's thought to be. Amazingly, so Forever was actually the title of a Warner Brothers compilation that they put out when he passed, which covered, you know, kind of obviously focused on more of his early years. But amazingly, this wasn't on the compilation that bears its name, which seems ridiculous, but, you know. And I think this is probably, it isn't a skippable track for me, but it's not my favorite. It's not one I look forward to or would put away on its own. I think it fits on the album just great. But yeah.
I think this would be a great song for someone other than Prince. This is songwriter Prince. This is Prince having the finger on the pulse of how pop songs are written. It's very major keys, you know, it's got a great hook for harmonies. And yeah, if it was someone else, you know, they could probably, you know, do big numbers with this. Yeah, it's, you know, obviously not my favorite.
No.
But, you know, it's a well-constructed song. And I mean, it just, again, like shows his songwriting ability, you know, just that kind of in a nutshell in terms of like turns of phrase, setting it up like the opening piano and, you know, how the song builds and bridges and, you know, little breakdowns and, you know, again, taking you back down at the end, going back to that original piano interlude. I mean, it's just, you know,
yeah,
textbook is why,
yeah.
you know, is why that man was like, you know, the model in terms of songwriting and production. But, you know, a bop, nah, not so much.
No.
But I tell you what I do like about this song, Take You Down a Rabbit Trail. You were mentioning Tamar singing background on this track and during that era. So when he took Tamar out on tour, I guess this had to be around 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
I got to see those shows. Saw him at the Nokia Theater in New York City. And you can Google, it's probably still up online. But him doing Redhead Stepchild with her, boy, if you hadn't seen it, get your life. I'll send you a link to it after the show. You got to see it. I mean, I basically set that up like I was there, man. But it's like the Nokia Theater in New York City. So anyway, he was a sideman for her. He was her guitar player.
Yeah.
And he said a lot of times in these interviews, it made me fall in love with playing guitar. Right? Again. So that collaboration with her kind of helped set the stage for this. Because he was just like, you know, it was just him and that Strat Abomination and a Mesa Boogie. I think it was like a Heartbreaker amp. He just fucking blew. And that's when he started like putting the guitar in the crowd, like handing it out to the crowd. Because, you know, he did the Jay Leno show to promote Lotusflower.
Yeah.
And he did that and he handed it to the dude in the crowd. And this dumbass was like, oh, do I get to keep it? But yeah, thank Tamar. Tamar deserves a little credit for this, you know, in terms of inspiring him to like, you know, show, you know, as we say down south, show him who he really is. You know?
Yeah. So Tamar's on the next song as well, or certainly did overdubs. The 5th track is Colonized Mind, and Tamar is again. So that would say that those were put on before summer 2006. But Shelby J has also done vocals for this track. And Shelby J didn't start performing with Prince until 2007. So clearly this song kind of had a major gestation period where it was just kind of there, waiting. It could easily have become a vault track. Maybe if you hadn't have met Shelby, it would have been, and then her overdubs was something that gave a different layer to it. In his mind, I don't really know. But yeah, so the basic tracking was done kind of November 2004, that overnight session that he did with Michael B and Sonny T. Yeah, I think this isn't the song that's my favorite, but I love this. I think this is such a great song. Really enjoy listening to this.
Yeah, the timing certainly checks out in terms of the lyrical content, thinking back to where the US was at that time. This is the Prince that oftentimes like divides a lot of fans. I feel like sometimes people get very uncomfortable with Prince when he gets either overtly political or overtly black, right? And in this situation, we like to, oftentimes the analysis, it was like, oh, Prince will say political stuff that is cool, but it doesn't really check out. But you have to think about where we were as a country in the U.S. around 2004. This was Bush years. I think they had run John Kerry. So this was pre-Obama, which I think he saw a lot of hope in. But, upload a two-party system, the lesser of two dangers, losing a choice, download a veiled form of fascism. This was Bush Jr. And, now we have the hindsight now of, post-Trump era of like, that was nothing. You ain't seen nothing yet. But, we were coming out of 9/11 in this country, in the U.S. You know how weird we were in the U.S. during that time. We were just, anyway, not a proud time for us. So, yeah, it was like, and also too, it was a little bit of that, Jehovah's Witness thing talking. We don't vote. We don't get involved in politics. That was at play there too. That informed some of those, like, I'm too good to vote, kind of opinions. But I think what you saw, though, was a really interesting analysis of Western society. What you put in is what you get out of it.
Yeah. And I don't know how, because I've heard that from people of not just about Prince, but about their musicians in, their musical likes and loves. I don't want them to get political. And it's like, right, I don't know how he couldn't have been. He spoke for people. He spoke for us. And I don't know how he couldn't have just done music about sex forever. And obviously becoming a Jehovah's Witness meant he moved away from a lot of the sex stuff. So we had to talk about what was going on with him. He couldn't just be putting out Raspberry Beret all the time. He had to be talking about the world around him.
Well, and as we've learned in his passing, he was far more political than he let on.
Yeah.
He was involved in a lot on the philanthropic level that he just didn't crow about. Like was, required people to, keep secret, like, philanthropic endeavors like from the late 80s that, he didn't want people to know about. And yeah, you're exactly right. How could he not? I mean, he was a citizen of the world, and, that's part of being a writer in this world. You write what you know, you write what you see, you write what you feel. And, it's only natural. I mean, we were all bobbing our heads when he was like, Ronnie talked to Russia, you know, mommy, why does everybody have a bomb?
Yeah, and
I mean,
that's
this cat's been at it since the Reagan era.
what's good is, like you say, we were all bopping our head. If he puts it on a groove, we have that choice then of, listen, I could just groove with this, or I could pay attention and I can listen. And I think Colonized Mind is a good example of that. Of, you can either just take it as, this is it's a groove here, or you can look at it in its lyrical setting and pay attention to what he's trying to say. So
Right.
it's
And you have to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, look,
Yeah.
we're all adults here. We have our own beliefs, and we can tell when somebody's been down an internet rabbit hole. And, we'll get to that in one of the songs later on the track. You know what I'm talking about. But see, here's the thing. Sometimes you just gotta that wasn't quite correct, but I'm gonna let you slide. Remember Dear Mr. Man from the Musicology album?
Yeah.
We're gonna leave you with these 3 words. We tired of y'all.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Never mind. No, we're not here to do math. That shit was funky. Sick and tired of being tired.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you just gotta go with it. Let the funk take you. Let the groove take you. And that's probably an extreme example with Colonized Mind, but I just when I think about that song, it's one of his epics. It's one of his epics. And particularly during an election year, there is zero tolerance for any kind of messages around, downplaying the importance of voting. And I want to flag that very clearly, that this is not the hill to die on. This is not the song to die on. You're getting lost in a small piece of subtext and missing the entire message, because that song said so much, and it was such a critical analysis of Western society.
Yeah, absolutely.
And great guitar work too.
Well, that's it's rare that he didn't hit that. When he picked up the guitar, by and large, you got something that would stay with you, or that worked. The 6th track on the album is Feel Better, Feel Good, Feel Wonderful. It had first been heard in June of 2006. It was put up on the MPG Music Club a week before the website closed permanently, in a section called Fresh from the Studio, where you could leave comments and criticisms to help him finish the track. I can't imagine another musician doing this. So this was on a page. It was a 1:25 kind of fade out version. And it just said, Fresh from the Studio, take a listen to a taste of a new demo from Prince. Recorded this past week at Paisley Park, all instruments and vox by Prince. It's still being worked on, and we'd like to hear some feedback from him. What's missing? What would you do to make it better? I can't imagine any other artist wanting that collaborative process. I mean, you're opening yourself up to, okay, you could be working on every song forever and ever and ever, because to somebody, no song will ever be finished. But to kind of just put a demo out there and go, what do you think? What's working? What's not working? Let's, see what you think of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because that's really rare.
Mm.
And as funky as that song is, oh my God, that fade out. Oh man, the last like what minute and a half of that joint?
Yeah.
Oh, keep your mind in perpetual motion, always on the move. Hit me. Oh man, come on, black man, what you doing? That's funky Prince, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
that last verse was like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So, I mean, so, and it's very rare because the man's, lyrics are always together, but I likened it to a Saturday Night Live skit. It's a great idea, but oftentimes the skit peters out in the last couple of minutes because they just couldn't figure out how to write an ending. So it's just like, what are we going to do? And so I think it was like, just kind of ran out of mojo on that last verse and was like, you know what? Stick to the groove,
Yeah.
because I can't tell you what the lyrics are right now, off the
No.
top of my head. But
No.
boy, I
No.
can tell you that vamp on the way out, though.
And it is one of those songs where, I know the chorus, and that's, lyrically, that's about it. And the reason, mainly I know the chorus because it's the title of the song, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just the groove. It's just okay, I'm in this now. I'm in, it's, just,
Yeah, very, very musicology like bass line, higher up on the octave scale, but just bouncy,
yeah,
just
you can really, really draw a line. You can almost kind of bunch together those albums like Musicology, 3121, Planet Earth, MPL Sound, Lotusflower. They're almost, they could be one kind of mega album because there's such a through line for all of it. He was clearly in a particular place with, his band, with his songwriting, with his instrumentation, not in a samey way, but
mhm.
I think people like us, the fans, can see right, okay, yeah, this has a bit of a similar feel to that one from there. And it just felt like he was really in a, this particular place at this time with his music.
That's really thought provoking. Now you giving me a playlist project now. Now I've got to go put that together. 'Cause now I've got to hear it. Now I got to groove to
That's
that.
exactly. That's fine. That's okay. Don't worry. I mean, we talked with Dean about Love Sexy, and he's
Mhm.
shifted the running order of the album. So we're all about that. We're all about
Ooh,
that.
interesting. I'm gonna have to dig that one up. All right.
We're gonna when we there'll be there's a link in the show notes. I've created a version of basically a playlist on Spotify that's Dean's version of the album. Positivity Has Gone is one of the big things from it.
Oh my.
Yeah. He doesn't think it belongs on the album. Thinks it spoils the album. He's but there we go.
Okay. All right. I don't know. I heard a live bootleg of Positivity. Like Prince opened the after show in San Francisco at the Warfield in like '88, and he started with Positivity, and that shit was funky. Sorry, but you know what? I'll go with it though. I wanna hear this new iteration. I'd love to hear it.
Um,
I'll look that up.
what I like, Positivity to me, and I realize we're not talking about Love Sexy, but Positivity to me is one of those where you've got that basic backing track of that almost kind of very minimal guitar and the rhythm, and you can do anything with that. You can go anywhere. You can, do really long versions of Positivity, get the band involved. You can, it can be very jazzy, I think. So live, I can imagine. I mean, obviously, he did it at the Love Sexy tour, but I can imagine it just, you could have really, really gone into that with positivity.
We were just
Like I
talking
say,
about
I'm
the
not
previous
denying
song.
it. Go on.
We were talking about the previous song, Feel Good, Feel Better.
Yeah.
It was that tempo.
Yeah.
So exactly how you just described it. And taking different shapes and forms, but yeah, that's a great observation.
The 7th track is Love Like Jazz. Again, this is one of those from the November 2004 session with Michael B, Sonny T. And yeah, I mean, Michael B has said that after this was the last recording session they did with Prince for a while after that. And as we say, this was November 2004. Love Like Jazz was on an early iteration of 3121, but was taken off as, kind of different songs came in and different, track arrangements were put together. I really like it. I think it's, again, it's not, it isn't my favorite track off this album. This isn't the one. But yeah, I think it has its place. I'm not convinced it would have worked on as well on 3121. I think it sits really well here.
Agreed. I could also maybe see it as part of the Planet Earth album.
Yeah.
This is another one of those songs where I was talking about before. It needs to grow on me, or I need to hear it the right way in the right context. At first, I was like, okay. But remember the 2010 Montreux shows?
Yeah.
He performed it live there. And it was like distorted guitars, and John Blackwell trying to do Michael Bland. So like giving his best aggressive, like, giving him his best shit. And it gave it a little oomph. And I was like, you know what? I get it now. I like this song now. You know what other song from that era really jumped out at me from that show? It was a Bria Valente cut. What are you going to do? He took it back. And it's funky, Pete, hear me when I tell you. Man, go back and listen to that show.
Oh,
Love Like Jazz, and to hear him do What Are You Gonna Do? I mean, All This Love. I'm sorry. That's part of the. What are you gonna do with all this love? Yeah, All This Love. But yeah, great cut. And, just the reminder I needed to like go back and appreciate this song. I mean, this is the thing about a lot of these, not even the more esoteric cuts, like even the seemingly accessible cuts. It's like, you got to know how to listen to it, right? Yeah. To get where he was trying to take you. And this is like a perfect example. And this is why I continue to revisit these albums year after year after year after year, pieces that I've grown up on. I always hear something different. I always learn something new. Like, wait a minute, I didn't think about that. Or I'll like read something, that I didn't learn. Like, oh, now I got to go back and listen. Like those Dwayne Tudall books from the studio sessions. Yeah, man, that'll make you get in that man's catalog for real and listen to some nuance. And so, Love Like Jazz was like one of those reminders, like keep refreshing yourself on the music. There's always something new to hear. And, in one of my many like iterations of like going back and revisiting this album, Love Like Jazz became one of my favorites.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And I think, so I'd listened to the album, obviously. I'd listened to it a few times, but when I knew we were going to talk about it, I went back and listened to it as an album rather than just the occasional song coming up on a playlist. And as I say, I really like the flow of the album. And this was absolutely one of those songs of, I don't remember this one that much from kind of when I first heard it, or, you know, when I'd listened to the album properly. But it's one that when it comes on, there's a really nice kind of endorphin hit with me of, oh yeah, no, I like this. And I tell you now, you know, I'm supposed to be doing work after our conversation. I'm going to be looking for that live version because I know he'll absolutely tear holes in it. He'll do what he does. You know,
It is fabulous. And, you know, there are times when you watch Prince and he can just be really ballsy, like he knows he nailed it. You know, like sometimes he'll just throw the pick, like, yeah. And he was feeling it. He was feeling it on that.
Yeah.
You know, but I'll tell you why, you know, I think you and I kind of had similar initial reactions. This is the part of the album where we get antsy because we know what's coming. We know what's coming.
So the next track, the 8th track on the album, is 77 Beverly Park, of which is almost certainly the place where this was recorded, which is 77 Beverly Park Lane in Beverly Hills. And that was his home and home studio from early 2008 until mid 2009. When it first starts, it kind of has kind of 2 stages. So the first part of it, you think, you know, this goes back to what I like about this album is there's a real, you can't be settled during many of the tracks. You think you know what this song is going to be. And then with that echoey guitar, and then it turns into this instrumental piece that has a very different feel to the first, you know, kind of section of the song.
Yeah, I have to admit, that's what I probably had the least patience with. And that's more on me as a listener in terms of that lack of willingness to surrender and, you know, and take that journey that you just described. But again, once you surrender to it, it's worth the ride.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, that's another one that it took a while to come around. And, you know, I'm still not going to purport like, you know, and now it's an underrated classic, you know, but in terms of, again, an album in its totality,
yeah,
pieces and the role that they serve, this really tees up everything else so nicely.
It's a lovely kind of palate cleanser.
Palate cleanser. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, that's exactly what this is. This is like, right, everybody, just take a breath, go and get a water or something. Just calm. We're coming, you know, coming towards the end now. And this the last bit of the album, you're gonna need to be hydrated. You're gonna need to be sat down. You know, it's that kind of. It's almost that kind of thing. It works on the album. You know, it really has its place. But you're right. No one would go, right, that's the one I'm putting on my, you know, compilation, or that's the one I want when I'm driving. It just nicely sits on the album.
And it requires discipline from the listener.
Yeah.
Right. You know, this is an album. This is a full, no skips, let it ride.
Yep.
Experience what the artist wanted you to experience, right? In the sequence that they want you to experience it. So yeah, it's a very disciplined track, you know, to take in and allow it to bloom, you know, in the way that it should.
So the next track, the 9th track, once 77 Beverly Park kind of finishes and indeed goes into it, there is a a little bit of overlap into this song, which is Wall of Berlin, recorded in that overnight session with Michael B, Sonny T. He'd already said the phrase Wall of Berlin on 3121. This is the song that's my favorite on the album, I think. And the and there, boy, is absolutely, if Hendrix had still been alive in the mid to late 2000s, this is a song he would have done. It is, it is pure Hendrix from beginning to end. I think if you get some of the later Hendrix stuff, so not necessarily with the experience, and put it next to this, you can see that comparison. You can see that through line.
With the Band of Gypsies cut. It's a Band of Gypsies cut. Let's take Prince out of the song. Let's take Prince out of the song, which is impossible, but let's do it for the sake of argument. Michael Bland is channeling his best buddy Miles. That rock crusher, just wow. I mean, just killing those drums with so much heart, but still on time, right?
Oh yeah.
And Sonny is doing his best, Billy Cox, just that sort of like muddy river flow that just like keeps, just that solid foundation under you so you can just like soar over the top. And that's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
I mean, that song is crazy, Pete. Crazy, crazy, crazy town.
All of it, everything. I love his voice on it. I adore his guitar playing on this. As I say, I think it's probably one of my top 20 Prince songs, because it's absolutely one of those songs that when it's finished, I think I might just put that one on again straight away, because I just love that kind of, like you say, there's the way I was describing it to a friend, there's a tight looseness to the song. That every part, every beat, every bass note, every guitar note is where it's supposed to be, but it has a looseness that if he'd wanted to go somewhere else, he could have done. That's kind of, and I think a tight looseness reflects how he he was as a musician, and when he played with a good band, how they were as a band. It was that kind of, listen, we're on it, we're playing on the one, and we're giving you a groove, but there's room to play here, and we could do other things. It's this is the song that when people talk about Prince and say, oh yeah, and they talk about the hits, and they'll, the conversation, generally I move the conversation around to, do you want to hear stuff that wasn't on the greatest hits? That is, this is almost certainly one of the songs that's on there.
Oh yeah, this is my antidote to While My Guitar Gently Weeps, right? Because people are just like, oh my God, so phenomenal. And yes, but Walk in the Park. Yeah. Let me show you what he was doing with a power trio.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I love that phrase that you used to describe it, that tight and looseness, right? Like even the throwaways were tight. Where am I?
Yeah.
It's just like little things like that. Rocket Baby. It's little throwaway lines. You could tell there were a couple of times, like even playing the lead line before the second verse. And it's almost like he's looking in the mirror, looking at himself, like playing, he plays the lead line. Yeah, 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 yeah. See, that's when you're feeling yourself. That's when you're feeling yourself. That's when you're reading your own press clippings in the mirror while sniffing your own farts. Like, yeah, baby, I'm doing this right here. You know? And you know what? And it's that kind of swagger, in that playing. Meanwhile, Sonny's going nuts underneath it. This isn't a simple bass line where he's playing a little boop, beep, boop, beep. Nah, he's, like I said, dropping his best Billy Cox.
Yeah.
And giving him, the fuel that he needed to just fire away over that. I mean, love it. Fun one to play. Love to play it. Not even close in terms of nailing it, but you can't tell me, yes, I do that. Yeah. Because why not, Pete? Why not?
Oh, exactly. I love that. That's wonderful.
Love that cut. I was hoping you would say that was your favorite cut, because I mean that one just does it for me. It just does it for me. And I mean, not only tops of this album, but it's a top fiver.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that thing. I know it's in my top 20. I could possibly say top 10, but I can't remember the last time I was like, right, okay, I'm going to come up with my top 10, top 20 Prince songs. I know what's number one, but only because I've been saying it for 30 years or so that, Sexy MF is my favorite Prince song of all time. But both you and I know that could be different tomorrow and different the day after that. And I only say that because that's what I've said in the past.
And it's always interesting having conversation with Prince fans in terms of their favorites. So the place where I rank Waller Berlin will be explained by this next statement. Dance On is in my top 3.
Wow. Oh.
That was Purple Rain Part 2. I mean, not Purple Rain. That was 1999 Part 2, and a low-key analysis of the sad state of the Black community at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, it's the guitar. It's the damn guitar.
And what Dance On, again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier on of, if you want, you can pay attention to the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit, what's happening? But at the same time, you've just got a groove. You've just got a groove.
Banana sandwiches
is on it.
Yeah.
So it is. It's and when they did it live, they did it more as a groove rather than as a any kind of statement song. But yeah,
and that's probably my biggest disappointment with Waller Berlin is we didn't get a live one.
No, I know.
Could you imagine?
No.
Could you imagine? I mean, I could
about it, Tommy.
You know what? I would have settled for a Third Eye Girl version.
Yeah.
And that's no shade on them. That's no shade on them, because Hannah could have gone nuts on that. Hannah would have gone nuts on that bad boy with that double kit. Get out.
Because again, they were Third Eye Girl, they were tight band, they were good band. They worked and created a great sound. Oh, you see now, I'm going to be thinking about that all day of what a Third Eye Girl version of Waller Berlin would have sounded like.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! It was
they did some good numbers. They did some good numbers. Remember, they did Endorphin Machine for Apollonia, and then it segged into She's Always in My Hair. I mean, he had him where he wanted him. And that's what's so sad is he lost his ability to play right when he was just really the apex predator of the game.
Well, that's the rest of my day sorted. Just imagine him. I'm just because that's the thing with Wall of Berlin again, with a band like that, you could jam on that for hours. There's no stopping.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
To me, man.
Hey man, I'm just giving it back. If I gotta sit with these thoughts, so do you.
I love it.
It's your fault for choosing this album.
Nothing to do with me. So Dollar Sign is the 10th track. And indeed, the beginning of it is the end of, so that the party noise of, hey, Maceo, give me a dub, is actually from the beginning of this rather than the end of Wall of Berlin. And it just carries on, as we say, 77 Beverly Park was a palate cleanser. We're still in that, we're kind of riding this wave to the end of the album, and this again is a great tune. I really like this. It's not Wall of Berlin, but yeah, I'll have this.
It's not Wall of Berlin, but it would do till it got here. Because if it had not been for Wall of Berlin, this would be my favorite cut. This is funky Prince. Prince. The rhythm guitar player that I always wanted to be, right? That nice bottom, and you could see, I mean, that's another one live that we didn't get. Could you imagine him with the MPG horns? And they just, everybody in step. Wow. Oh, come on, son. Oh, that would have just been nasty.
Yeah.
And then that, the retort to the short line, oh, short, that's all you got. Let me hit you with this. And then that horn fanfare. Could you just see him like throwing that little punch, that little Prince punch, and then they hit it with it? I mean, no, what an amazing song is, in the Camille voice, was resurrecting that. But like just very slick writing, and low-key statements under there, what was the line? Where you, everybody, when you go, you want to put your face in a magazine. Latest ad for the I'm about to destroy these lyrics and I'm about to butcher the song that I love, but just such a funky bop, just unquestionable. It's one of those songs where you make that face, that funk face, that grimace, that ugly, like I smell something.
I'm so
I don't care what I look like.
I thought it was just me that made that face, but you're right. That kind of me and my kind of Prince friends always describe it as the sound engineer problem. That we always imagine the sound engineer going, "Okay, what's this? Oh, it's the new track, Dollar Sign. Okay, yeah, no, tape's rolling whenever you're ready." And the sound engineer hearing it for the first time, just kind of slumping over the desk, just kind of getting up from his chair, going, "No, can't be having that. Can't be having that. No need for that."
Yeah, I mean, you just have to imagine how many takes must have been ruined over time, just by engineers like, what the hell am I hearing? Oh my God.
Yeah, just that. Slumping forward, pushing all the faders up, so everything's, kind of distorting and stuff. But yeah, it just...
Right.
Yeah,
no, it's such a great track. And I mean, it's one of those things where coming out of Wall of Berlin, it's a setup for like a letdown, because it's just like, oh, we just crashed our instruments at the end of this. I mean, we've had wholesale destruction. There's nothing more to be said. And then you come back with this bopper?
Yeah. And then that's the thing. It is, like we say, that palate cleanser of 77 Beverly Park. We go Wall of Berlin, we go Dollar, and then we kind of have Dreamer, which I remember kind of one of the first times I heard it, kind of getting to this last section of the album and thinking, why didn't you put all these at the beginning? Why are we, why isn't this how you started? But I mean, because this little trio of songs here are just, so Dreamer recorded at Sunset Sound. Apparently, and I don't know about this, and this isn't somebody that I'm aware of. Dreamer's said to be inspired by the comedian, social activist, social critic, writer, entrepreneur Dick Gregory. That's not a name that's familiar to me. He was nominated for a Grammy for this best solo rock vocal performance, losing out to Bruce Springsteen's "Working on a Dream." So, which, you know what? If you're going to lose to anyone, losing to Bruce Springsteen isn't so bad.
Yeah, so the Dick Gregory thing. So Dick Gregory was a 60s comedian. He was a contemporary of Bill Cosby, and that sort of, clean-cut comedian. He became really immersed in Black consciousness over the years. And he is the one who introduced the idea of chemtrails to Prince. So the line of, think they spraying chemicals over the city while we sleep.
Yeah.
And he talks about this in an interview with Tavis Smiley. He had Dick Gregory over at the house, and, he was asking the question, what are all these lines in the sky, and, why are, people in our neighborhood acting crazy, and why are these lines only over, urban neighborhoods?
Yeah.
Wherever you come down on that chemtrails theory, that's where you come down. Okay, Prince.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out. And I mean, look, Dick Gregory, was a well-respected figure, and I will never speak ill of the dead like that. I agree with him on that, but I am no stranger to conspiracy theories, so I, am not going to debunk it like it ain't a thing, because there is obviously something happening.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the, where that chemtrails thing entered the song. And it's almost kind of like where that song drove off the cliff a little bit, because, we were with everything else,
Yeah.
Because let me tell you that, have you ever clutched your steering wheel so tight playing that the police siren passed you by that night? That's the life I live, brother.
Yeah.
That's the life of a black man in the United States.
Yeah.
White knuckle, 10-2. I mean, I'm so conditioned, I turn my music down. I'm a 55-year-old man, with kids, law-abiding, upstanding citizen. But when I see a cop, that shit can be chilling. So, I mean,
yeah,
that line really, really touched a nerve. And then there's a setup while the helicopter's circling, theories getting deep. Oh shit, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. It's either going to be some Jehovah's Witness shit or it's going to be some weird political shit. Where you going with this, dog? Where you going with this, my boy?
And listen, that's the thing, I am a 52-year-old white man. I have never, ever experienced any kind of targeting, any kind of, I have no concept of what it is to be singled out in society. So when I hear anyone singing, not just Prince, but anyone singing about this, it's by my own privilege, of which I am absolutely aware of. By my own privilege, I can't relate to it. I don't have, the fear you were talking about of, whether or not that police siren is behind you, you tense up, and like you say, you turn the music down. It is unrelatable to me, but it's just the way of things. As I say, I am very aware of my privilege, and I've said on a couple of occasions, you know, I'm a middle-aged white man, and middle-aged white men have been having a good time of it for hundreds of years. You know, there can be no complaints in any kind of shift in power, any kind of shift in authority. You know, it is the way of things. And that's...
See, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of Prince's music, right? So you don't have to directly relate.
No.
To have empathy and understand, right? There are experiences that you've had that I will never know, but because I'm a human being, I can have empathy and feel for you.
Absolutely.
And Prince came at a time, his music did a lot. I would say music and drugs have done more to unite the races because it creates these conversations and these interactions that you wouldn't normally have on your own volition.
Yeah.
You know, the whole drug conversation, that's a whole other thing. I used to do a podcast called Drugs and Stuff on drug policy reform. So that's my little previous back bag. But, you know, things like that bring people to the table, that create these universal experiences, I think are so valuable. And I touched on this before sometimes, you know, when Prince would like really like lean into his experience of like, I'm a black man in America. You know, sometimes it would make people uncomfortable because they didn't want to see him like that. They wanted to see him as this, you know, transcendent, you know, post-racial sort of figure when, you know, he sang about, you know, busing, integrating schools and, you know, racist treatment in Minnesota. And we saw, you know, the police brutality incidents there. So he wasn't pulling this shit out of thin air.
No.
But I mean, the way that he used music to unite people in terms of like the composition of his band, the influence of music, you don't never, I mean, you know, so here's the thing, you know, you don't really think of like guitar as a like black guy instrument, air quotes.
No.
But, you know, he held it down in that space and has inspired so many brothers to pick that thing up. And has inspired so many black dudes to listen to, another air quotes, white music, right? I mean, I love the Sundays because of that cat.
Nice. Yeah.
I've never listened to them, but I got clued in like Prince likes the Sundays and Cockatoo Twins. So, you know, go digging in my crates. You're talking about Birmingham. I'd love to have the fucking Duran Duran conversation with you because that's, you know, hey, we could do one. We could do one just on them, you know. But no, just the beauty of like, you know, the way that music brought everybody, you know, Prince's music brought everybody together. And I mean, Dreamer is a rock anthem, rock anthem that is talking about social justice.
But
you know,
I think he's always been doing this. I mean, if we go back, even you know, what is fourth album, you know, Controversy, am I black or white? Am I straight or gay? You know, he was playing with how we took him on board, how we perceived him. But you're right, is that this is the thing, Tommy. Prince is a great unifier because it's unlikely that you and I would have ever spoken in the grand scheme of things, geographically, almost certainly. But he's brought us together. You know, we have kind of had this incredible conversation and, you know, discovered or taken apart and analysed this piece of his, you know, and we wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for, because I get, you know, I like Duran Duran, of course I do, but I don't think I can do a podcast on them. But but you know, my, you know, love, respect, and fandom of Prince is I'm happy to talk about him kind of forever. And, you know, you're the fifth episode of this podcast, and I've loved every conversation that I've had, mainly because, you know, as I've said, I love Prince. Do I know everything? No. Can I appreciate him in the same way that you appreciate him as a fellow guitar player? No. I can make a face when he plays guitar. You know, when he bends a string, I can go, oof, oh dear, that's a bit funky, that's a bit good. You know, but it's that, and that's why I've loved speaking to people like yourself, because you have a different experience, and I love kind of hearing about that and learning from that as well. So I know that the next time I listen to this album, I'm going to be listening to it from my perspective, but also from your perspective as well.
Likewise.
You know,
You know, what you got from me, I got from you. And this is, you know, and this is the beauty of that, you know, you were talking about, you know, just hitting that chord. In that moment in time, we are on the same page. We are on the same frequency. We are moving in the same direction. Think of all the Prince shows that you've been to. And I think about all the Prince shows that I've been to. It's the most diverse experience of your life. You will see a cross section of the world, and everyone is positive. Everyone is beautiful. Everyone is funky, and everyone is happy to see each other.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
It's just that you don't find that experience.
No, you don't. I think that's why I prefer going to music gigs rather than sporting events, because there is no other side. There is no other. We're all on the same page. We're all going in the same direction. We're all having the same experience, or we're all having the source of our joy is the same. We're not necessarily all having the same experience, you know, because I've been with friends who've been, they like Prince, but they wouldn't call themselves a Prince fan. You know, we've been to see Prince together. I've been on my knees by the end of it, and they've been like, yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. Well, I think I'm going to become religious because.
But you know what? Even the most staunch, you know, it was all right people, they still at one point in that show make that face.
Absolutely. And I know
have
people
to make
do
that
it.
face.
Yeah.
You know, the funk beckons us. You must make that face.
Oh, I'm going to get that on a T-shirt, I think, Tommy. The funk beckons us. And it does. You know, I always think, so I obviously, you know, big Prince fan, but I really like hip hop as well. I love hip hop. I love kind of De La Soul, a lot of the East Coast stuff, Tribe Called Quest, you know, and that kind of family, Beastie Boys as well are in there. And I, again, coming back to that, I love the rhythm. I love the groove that a lot of that music creates. But nobody in my family has liked it. And I'm like, I don't know where this has come from. I'm not questioning it. Similar with funk, you know, my mum's a big fan of kind of the big torch singers, the Barbra Streisands and the Barry Manilows and things like that. My dad was a fan of like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Who. No one no one in my family was a soul fan, was a funk fan. So when I became one, it was, if you look at kind of my surroundings, it's like, you shouldn't be a fan of any of this. You are far too straight to be, you know, into this kind of music. But you know, it's tremendous. We just very quickly just need to mention the last track, which is basically a companion piece to the opening track. This is Back to the Lotus. The thing I thought about this, which again, you know, we were saying there's that kind of almost that bunching together of, and I know there was the big recording session, 3121, Planet Earth, MPL Sound, and Lotusflow3r, and I think you could, you know, certainly put your arm around musicology. But the big 3121 connection, which I take from this album, is that kind of heavy tremolo effect that he has on his voice, which is really prevalent on this, that almost kind of, which we heard for the first time on 3121, the title track. And I don't know, I was thinking about this the other day, I don't know what was it a bit of a self-image thing? Was it, you know, because I don't think it adds anything to the song. So I always think, okay, let's take it inside then. What was going on with him that he thought, I don't want to sing this as me. I've got to sing it as whatever this thing is with this tremolo effect.
That's interesting. I never really thought about it like that.
Whereas 3121, I think it works. But just, I'm not convinced it works here. And when I think that, the obvious answer might just be Prince made a mistake. But because I'm like, yeah, Prince doesn't make mistakes. There's, you know, there's something else under here.
I think he just got a hard on for the sound. So there are a couple of things. There are a couple of reasons I think that. I remember hearing a story from Morris Hayes talking about how they recorded Fascination Rain,
right,
for the Exodus album.
Yeah,
and how they took a microphone and wrapped it in a plastic bag and put it in a bucket of water to have a true underwater sound for the guitar tone. So maybe it was some of that experimentation.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, you know, it's getting a new toy. The end of this track, where the guitar signal like cuts out, like the same thing where he did with Fury on the Saturday Night Live performance and walked off the stage. Coolest shit I've ever seen. One of the newer versions of the Boss flanger pedal, which is his favorite. That's how you get that jet engine, you know, sort of flanger sound. So there's a newer model where you just step on it and it just cuts the signal out. So it's like a signal cut. So there are a couple of tracks where he did that. Going into Feel Good, Feel Better, Feel Wonderful is using that effect. Yeah. So maybe it's just like, you know, I got a cool sound. I just want to play with it.
Yeah, maybe. Absolutely. It could well be.
You know. It worked. I mean, he used to do stuff like that just to mess with people. Oh, that'll be sick.
I guess that comes back to that thing that we were saying of he was answering to no one. He was, you know, he was doing what he wanted to do. He was doing what he felt the fans wanted him to do, and he was putting kind of the raw music, you know, out there. So, listen, Tommy, I have taken up far too much of your time. Thank you so much for just spending some time with us and talking through this incredible piece with this incredible artist. I really, really appreciate you kind of giving us your thoughts, and you know, I've really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your kind of perspective on the whole thing. It's been wonderful. Thanks, man.
Pete, I have to say thank you so much for having me on. You know, I saw your call for, for guests. And I just love the concept of the podcast. And, I was telling you in our email, quite frankly, I didn't think I'd hear from you. So I'm just absolutely thrilled that, you decided to have me on and have this conversation. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. I love connecting with, similar fans or fams, as the community says, and, your love for, Prince's music is obvious. And it's just such a joy to sit and talk with you, about, particular deep cuts. Anybody can have a conversation about Purple Rain and Diamonds and Pearls, but, this is the good stuff, man. This is the good stuff. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and love what you're doing.
I was so pleased when you chose an album that wasn't kind of one of the, in air quotes, obvious ones. It was really, really good. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much for coming on.
All right. I appreciate you so much, Pete. Love what you're doing, man.